Welcome into Unbreakable, a mental wealth podcast with Jay Glazer. I'm Jay Glazer, and I love having my friends on. So I have a friend of mine on today, but I love having friends of mine on also who have just, man, their story is incredible. They have worked their asses off to create these universes for themselves, which you could never imagine as, that we've created as, if we looked at from a little kid on, what would we become? And our guest has certainly done that. Before I get to her, if you're like many people, you may be surprised to learn that 1 in 5 adults in this country experienced mental illness last year, yet far too many fail to receive the support they need. Carol on Behavioral Health is doing something about it. They understand that behavioral health is a key part of whole health, delivering compassionate care that treats physical, mental, emotional, and social needs in tandem. Carol in Behavioral Health, raising the quality of life through empathy and action. All right, talking about action, this woman is she is a fire plug. She's a spark plug. And we became friends through Guy Fieri, who's been on the show as well. And she's, created this whole new universe, just like Guy has, that I'm just marvel at. And we just had her on our Fox Thanksgiving show in New York. And she took over the show, took over the set, wowed all of us. The one and only super chef, Antonia Lofaso. She has 3 restaurants in LA. She has Scopa. She has Dama and Black Market. She's all over the Food Network. She is better at TV than all of us who's on our show. And she is I'm proud to call her a super friend of mine now as well. How are you?
I'm so good. First off, thank you for that introduction. Like Absolutely. I was starting to sweat when you were reading off that like resume. I was like, wait, who is that?
That's you. It's exactly who it is.
I know, but sometimes the years go on and you actually forget or don't necessarily calculate everything that's like, what you've done. But thank you for that.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, we all need hype people around us, right? And look, here's the thing, because I want to get into like how you got to where you are in the restaurant business, but even after that, like I didn't go to school for TV. I did go for communications, but because of my ADHD, I didn't go to class, so I got by on my 2.3 GPA at Pace College or Pace University now, downtown Manhattan. But I just kind of, learned and picked it up. But later when we were doing our Thanksgiving show, man, you were just fantastic. And, knew how to hit time and knew what we were looking for. And now you're on, how many TV shows are you on right now on the Food Network?
Food Network sometimes, it's crazy to think about it. Probably close to 7 or 8, it depends on, what we're talking about. But yeah, it's, I know what you're going to ask.
The question is, how do you get good on, did you learn to be good on TV?
So I have to tell you, and I've actually talked to producers about this, like, should I be, in some kind of communications class, like as I was kind of coming up and, what do you think about my presence here? And honestly, my only thought through this entire process was just be myself, try to communicate, in a very sort of like, a small amount of time, what it is that you're trying to say, get right to the point. Guy actually says this all the time, try and talk in sound bites. That's like the best way to explain it. But at the heart of it, the core of it really is just being myself, and I can date that back to my parents. My dad would joke all the time. He's like, oh my God, we would take you on an airplane from New York to California to visit family. And you were walking up and down the aisle, introducing yourself to like strangers on the plane. My name is Antonia. This is my brother, Dominic. We're going to California to visit. And I was just free in my ways of communication. And I just wanted to talk to people. And so, when people ask me that question, I'm like, there was no way of getting better at it. There was just practice in being who I am authentically.
Right. Being authentic is huge. And, you can lose that a lot on TV. Look, there's no, like all of us on our show, as you saw, right? You saw us in person. We're exactly on TV as we are in person, right? 100%. We're all fucking crazy, but in a good way.
Yeah. Right? That's like the best part of it. It's like, waiting your turn to talk, but also listening to what someone else is actually saying, not just waiting to say something, like engaging with someone authentically, giving people the information about what it is that you're doing and engaging. Right. And it's all just social behavior, that really I was taught by my parents. My father's like one of the biggest, he's, a construction guy from New York, a Sicilian construction guy from New York, but any place he went into, whether restaurant, whether it was a neighbor's house, it was like, how are you? Who are you? This is who I am, and getting right down to the core of like authentic stories about himself, his family, just connect with people as quickly as possible so that you can like share in a real moment.
Yeah, I want people to hear this also because it's one of the greatest skills we can all have. And you talk a lot, I talk a lot, but the best skill we have is that we listen. Yeah. And like people that are, trying to be sideline reporters, and I always tell them that in TV, like, yeah, you got to talk about your thing. But a lot of times we're trying to think about our next question, and we never hear what that person across from us says. The best TV is that reaction to what somebody says. Oh, wow, they just said that? Oh, man, let's talk about it. And so many times people just gloss it over because they're trying to think about the next thing to say instead of hearing what that person is. And that's a great lesson for television, for business, for relationships, for anything.
Specifically relationships, I remember being in one of those a while back. They're like, are you listening to me or just waiting for your turn to respond? I was like, hold on. I was like, I'm sorry.
Now, all right. So I want to talk about your journey to where you are. I mean, Scopa is, man, I love Scopa. It's so freaking incredible. If people come out to Los Angeles, it's in Santa Monica, get your ass over to Scopa. It's fucking unbelievable. But again, being in the restaurant business and owning a restaurant are two different things. Take us all through your journey to how you got here.
Well, very much the same. I didn't go to college. I took a couple of classes in like, I think it was, the history of movies in like the 50s, because I was like, I don't know what I want to be, but I've always cooked, as a very young girl. I was always, my parents owned restaurants and delis, and I was just always in the hospitality industry. I started on a hot dog on a stick when I was 16 years old because I needed to be able to like pay my insurance on the car my parents bought me. And, slinging corn dogs at the mall and not realizing, this is like 1995, that this is an opportunity, that this is a profession, right? That this is a profession for me. That, if you look at there was no television, culinary competitions, food shows, very, very small amount. You had Julia Child, but that was about it. And
Emerald, and that's about it.
Yeah. You didn't see what you see now. Right. So it's like, when I see kids on the street, they're like, oh my God, I grew up watching you. I was like, oh my God, that's how long I've been doing this. And where it becomes an actual like profession. And so, I was just working in restaurants and I was like, this is what I want to do. Not with the idea of being on television, not with the idea of doing cooking shows or cooking competition shows. It was like, I just cannot get food out of my system. I want to eat it. I want to serve it. I want to cook it. I want to share it with people. And that's kind of where it started. And I worked for Wolfgang Puck for many, many years after I went to culinary school.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, I worked for him at his flagship Spago in Los Angeles. So got this like incredible, Michelin star background. How
did you get that gig?
Ready for this?
Yeah. My
brother was sleeping with one of the waitresses. Okay. And was like, hey, not that hard. He was like, he's like, there was no like rhyme or reason to, like, I didn't have to, I don't know, jump through that many hoops, but I did go in, in my like little blazer with my resume and my diploma. And I remember giving it to the chef in the kitchen. Like, I graduated second my class, and he was like, oh, could care less. Like, could care less. He was just like, how hard do you work? Like, basically, how long can you withstand, the work in the kitchen, and let's see how hard you can work. And I came in and I did like a 12-hour stage. I think he like changed a light bulb during my interview with him. I was like, they're all nervous, and he was like changing a light bulb. He's like, I don't really care. How can you come in tomorrow and try out? Like, words didn't matter. It was like, let me see what you can do. And so I came in, I did like a 12-hour stage with him, and I worked with the fish guy. And he's like, yeah, she's good enough. We can put her in like Garde 3, which basically is just like, I can like heat up soups and maybe make salads. And that was it. And I worked Garde 3 in the lunch prep for at Spago for, I don't know, probably like 3 years, until like the girl who cooked foie gras and was able to like make salmon salads unfortunately had to go have surgery. And I was like, yes, I have a chance to move up. Like, cause that's how cutthroat it was at the time. Like, you didn't move up unless somebody quit, got fired, or got sick. And that was the truth. And so I just kind of made my way through the Wolfgang Puck kitchen for many, many years. I became their first female pizza cook. I worked their grill. I worked the fish station. I worked the pasta station. I worked every station. I would go home after lunch service, come back and work the parties for dinner service. I would stay until like 2:00 in the morning and clean foie gras like late at night. And I just tried to soak up every part of that kitchen that I possibly could. And then I left, because I was like, I've been here long enough. There's no room for growth. This is like the opportunity where I'm going to stay here and just sort of execute Wolfgang Puck's food for the rest of my life, or I'm going to go out on my own and see what else is out there in the world and potentially open up something on my own. Right. And so I left.
Wait, real quick, before you start. What is your computer on set? Like you keep moving, it keeps moving around.
Oh, sorry. It's just
every
my
time
hand.
you move, it moves.
Okay.
Is it on your lap?
It's on my lap.
Oh, okay.
And also,
okay.
I'm Italian, so I'm like,
I know. So every time you move, it moves. Yeah. Good. All right.
Okay.
So you left.
I'll try and stay strong.
Did you leave with another?
I graduated with honors. I left with honors.
But was there another opportunity? Or you just said, I'm just going to throw myself out there.
So it was so scary, because every chef in that kitchen was like, I can't believe you're going to get ready to leave this empire, right? To go work for, and at the time, SBE had just partnered with Michael Mina. SBE is Sam Nazarian's restaurant group here in Los Angeles. They had a lot of different nightclubs. They had Hyde. They had partnered with Katsuya to make Katsuya more of like a, high-end sushi brand. Jose Andres had just purchased the SLS hotel. So Jose was going in there. Michael Mina was opening up 14 on Sunset next to Hyde. And so in my mind, I'm like, get in at the bottom part of like this restaurant group that's opening these restaurants with all of these, different chefs that you've never worked with. And the only opportunity they had for me was to work at the Abbey. Do you know the Abbey in West Hollywood?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So every chef in the country.
People don't know, the Abbey is probably the most prominent gay bar in
all of the country.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely.
All of the country. And
it's
on top
actually a great hangout. I got to be honest with you. I've gone with girlfriends. Yes, I've gone with girlfriends. I've gone with some of my gay friends. It's fantastic. Yes.
The Abbey's amazing. But when you're talking
it's a fun time, yeah.
But when you go from making foie gras at Spago to making burritos at the Abbey, people want to question your decisions.
Okay.
But I knew at that point I was going to, have an opportunity to get in and work at their supper club, which was Foxtail. And that's what happened at the time. And so I then was able to go and open one of their first supper clubs, which was Foxtail. And at the same time, got on the very first or the fourth season of Top Chef. So their PR team was super excited that I came in and that I had all this background and all this knowledge, that I was getting ready to be, the chef of this new supper club that they were excited about opening, that I had tried out for. They loved what I was doing. The CEO at the time, Eric Berghammer, who I think actually now is one of the big executives at what's the music company that's like taken over everything? Live Nation.
Oh, yes. Okay.
Okay. And so he was like, we want to give you this opportunity. Same time I went and did Top Chef, and it just kind of blew everything out of the water. They're like, oh my God, she just did so great on Top Chef. Oh my God, so I went from being like a line cook sous chef at Spago and at the Abbey to all of a sudden being catapulted into executive chef of a new like hot supper club, and had just finale'd the season 4 of Top Chef. And so it was like, all of a sudden it was like a whirlwind of, going from absolutely this to like this.
Well, back up. So when you're a line chef or a sous chef, I don't know what kind of pay that is. How hard is life?
I started at $7.50 an hour. Okay. When I left Spago, I was making $13.50 an hour.
Wow. Really?
Yep. And when I started, yep. And when I started my first sous chef position at the Abbey, I was making $32,000 a year.
Okay. Big upgrade from the from your $750, but still
living
in LA, 32 grand. I hear you. You and I connect on this, right? I was making my $9 grand a year for 11 years. Yeah. Like I get the struggle. Yep.
It was real. And actually the crazy part is when I first started at Spago, I was offered a job at the Peninsula Hotel making $11 an hour versus the $750. but I knew what I could learn at Spago making the 750 because everything was made from scratch. The pastas, the pizzas, the doughs, literally we were getting whole animals in for fabrication. The Peninsula is a larger, company. So a lot of that stuff is like fabricated outside of the venue. So I knew I was going to take a pay cut, but I would make it up in wealth of knowledge.
Right. You've been around. Is it harder being a female chef?
Oh my God. Wasn't that many of us. Like I was the only female chef that worked during the day at Spago. I was the only female in the kitchen. And at night there was another girl named Meta and we kind of looked alike. So I was actually just called Day Meta because we looked alike. And so for a long time they were just like, oh, it's Day Meta. I was like, you mean Antonia.
Right.
And so there just wasn't many of us. And so you either played with the big boys or it was very difficult.
It seems to me too, there's a lot of that almost same kind of ribbing, hazing, everything you'd have like in the NFL locker room, the world that I'm in.
100%. And the crazy part is like, I actually didn't mind it. You know what I mean? Like I like to play around, and honestly, I also had
give it back. Yeah.
I could give it back hard.
Right.
But the other part is I also grew up in a kitchen though, like the Spago kitchen, like they were very respectful, like all of the chefs in there, like the world that I lived in, like it wasn't some of the horror stories that I've heard from, a lot of like other people. Like my chefs were amazing. They taught me, they loved me. They, we all messed with each other big time, but like there was a lot of respect, which was great.
Okay. Now, all right, go from there. So
I opened my first restaurant and then it failed after a year.
Did you open it because now people knew who you were from Top Chef so you can get investors or
no. So I was able to open up Foxtail just based on my merit. Like Eric Berghammer at the time fought for me. He loved me. He was just like, you're going to love this girl. Like she's who needs to open Foxtail. I met Brent Bolthouse at the time who had basically was like the largest club promoter in all of Los Angeles. He now he now owns like all the bungalows like all throughout Los Angeles. The one at in Santa Monica, and there's another one up in the north and near San Francisco and Long Beach. And so it's like all these people were kind of just starting out. And it was
you opened, you didn't own it. You were opening
I just opened it. I was just an employee.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's fine.
And so and a lot of the decisions were taken away from me because again, I was an employee. I wasn't a partner. I wasn't a chef that came in really at the time. Like you're talking about, this is like 2005, 2006. And so really, if you look back at like the history of when chefs started to really get equity, sweat equity for restaurants, I mean, that's really only started over the last like 10 years, 10, 15 years, really. It's not a long period. Like most of the time chefs were just hired. They made a salary, they built these concepts along with the money and they really had no equity in the business if it did well.
Okay.
And so this all went down. The restaurant was right above a nightclub. They were very specific about who came in there, like the very LA scene of this isn't about the food. It's more about just who's here and what they're drinking and it's just the restaurant's like a pit stop before they go into the nightclub. And I was like, wait a second, like that's not what I was planning. And this isn't the food I wanted to do. And, so there was just a lot of tension and a lot of like rift between myself and I was someone who spoke up, even though I had never opened a restaurant before. I knew in my gut what was right and what was wrong. I knew what I felt intuitively. I can get behind this. I can't get behind this. So I was sort of like the loudest one in the room screaming, like, this isn't going to work. This doesn't feel right. I don't like the direction it's going. And everyone's like, no, don't worry about it. We're still doing it. Like you can either stay on the train or get off the train. And the train didn't even make it a year and a half. And, they're like, people don't like the club and we have to lower the music so that people can dine downstairs and people don't like the chairs. I was like, these are all the things that like we talked about before it opened, like how are we going to charge someone like $90 for a steak when they have to sit on a stool? It just doesn't make sense. Like the seating doesn't make sense. The tables don't make sense. Like, Biggie Smalls blaring upstairs at the nightclub while people are trying to, enjoy a $700 bottle of wine downstairs doesn't make sense. And so it was a failure and I almost stopped cooking. I left. Yeah. I was like, I took 6 months of severance and I was like, I don't know if I can do this anymore. The headlines read like, literally throughout, any food blog, any food publication, it was just like how poorly I had done. I was like a flash in the pan because I had done so well on Top Chef, and I really didn't have like the gumption to see it through. Oh, people went after me so hard. It was so bad.
How did you handle that?
Oh my God. I went and hid in my bedroom for like 4 months and just took care of my daughter and was like, I don't think I'm going to cook anymore. And my daughter's father at the time was just like, you are sad and depressed, and you're sad and depressed because you're not cooking. And he actually, at the time, he's really good friends with Eddie Murphy, and Eddie Murphy was looking for a private chef, and I had never done private chefing before. And he's like, listen, just to get you back on the horse, why don't you just go cook up at Eddie's for a couple of days a week and like, just get your like mojo back and enjoy yourself. Like, remember why you like cooking. And I was like, okay, fine. I'm like, I do need a job because my severance is running out. And it was like, when Stella got her groove back in that movie, like Angela Bassett, like that was me, like with Eddie Murphy.
I just watched that 2 weeks ago with Rosie. Yeah.
So good. Minus the sex. Like it was, no, but honestly, like I went up there, I was so well received by this family that just wanted good food and had an unlimited budget. And I made 3 different proteins and 2 cakes and different kinds of starches. And I just had the best time cooking for him, and I did that for like 2 years. And then I basically built my way back. They asked me to come back and do Top Chef All-Stars again. I was like, totally like, I don't want to do that again because the notoriety doing so well in it the first time, what people expected from me in Los Angeles. And then when I didn't deliver, it was just like, it was like, men in pitchforks chasing after me and being like, don't let her open anything. Like the guys, this was the best part. I think it was Think Food Group, not Think Food Group, was it? One of the food groups that does, what's that restaurant? Was it Koi Sushi? Like, they do boa, boba and some other things. I remember putting my resume into it. They wouldn't even call me back. Like, would not even call me back. Like, I was like scarlet letter.
Wow.
And I was like, you know what? Fine. I'm going to go back and do Top Chef All-Stars. And if I do it, I have to commit to it because I was trying to sell my book at the time. And I'm just
by the way, back it up here too, because I know, and I've talked about it, but
yeah,
we all deal with anxiety. And when things like that happen to us, it's so loud for us with those with anxiety, where you think everybody's looking at you and everybody's pointing, and most of the time they're not, but it's just so loud for us. It's hard for us to get through it. But like you said, like the lesson there, you've got to like get back to what you do that you love, but it is hard. You've got to figure it. It's a rare skill or trait to be able to tune out those voices and those roommates in your head that everybody's staring, pointing, and laughing.
Well, it was probably the scariest moment of my life because the thing that I loved the most, which was cooking and hospitality, there was a part of it where I was like, I can't do this. I shouldn't do this. I don't belong there. They don't want me. And, and Zaya's dad at the time, who's in entertainment, he, who had seen failure himself. And I think we don't talk enough about that part. Like successful people don't talk about how many times they fell down and almost stopped and, like skinned their knee so bad that they thought they'd never walk again, kind of a thing. And
that's what this podcast is for exactly that.
In that moment, I had a choice, you know what I mean? And he said this to me, and mind you, him and I weren't together at the time. And in fact, we were actually not in the greatest space other than being Zaya's parents. But I respected his knowledge in the career world, so much that I was like, listen to what he's saying, because he's just saying this to you because he's been there before, which is like, get up. Yes. Who cares if anyone is talking and no one cares. Do you know what I mean? And do the thing that you love and start over. You can start over. And I was like, okay. And I did. I started over and then got into the restaurant industry with business partners that I was like, in that moment, I was like, here's the thing. If we don't open up something that we both can mutually agree upon, then we shouldn't do this. And the crazy part is, are you ready for this, Jay? Of like points in the universe that connect. Okay. This awful experience that I had where I almost stopped cooking because I opened this restaurant with SBE. At the time, one of the bartenders there who was just learning his mixology craft and his spirit craft is Pablo Moy, who is my now business partner, who actually introduced me to the business partners that we built the last 3 restaurants with. Built basically a $20 million restaurant empire over the last 11 years. Right. And so this awful experience that I had, that I was like, oh my God, this almost stopped my entire career. I met someone there who then connected me, and we all connected to build what have been some of the proudest restaurant moments of my life, which are Black Market, Scopa, and Dama, which are 3 restaurants in a major market like Los Angeles that have survived recessions, COVID, all the things that have taken restaurants out. Ours are, still supported and thriving.
What was the hardest? For me, again, I always go back to about $9,000 a year for the 11 years, but like, it's interesting. Like, I got rejected for all those 11 years for a full-time job, but now I look at it like I try and use my mental health issues as my superpower. So like my depression told me I was worthless and, you were worthy of being rejected. So I didn't mind getting rejected. It turns out it ended up helping me. Okay, fine. But fucking A was miserable. But, you have a lot of these moments you look back and you're like, oh my God, I can't believe I pulled myself out of that. But the opposite of that, I've had these moments. I'm like, oh my God, like, how did I get here? And I'm still waiting to wake up in 5th grade. And my mom wakes me up in school. None of this happened. What was your first moment of, oh my God, how did I get here?
I think it was, truthfully, I think it was like pretty recent. And I know this is going to sound so crazy, right? Because, in the midst of me closing this restaurant, going back to Top Chef, Zaya's dad had passed away. Mm-hmm. And so even with all of this, like, restaurant failure, what am I going to do? Then on top of it, my partner, who was supposed to be, financially partnership, raising child partnership, is now gone, and it's just me. And so I was like, what else can happen? Like, that's where I lived for a very, very long time, with just waiting for the other shoe to fall. So there's so much that's happened with building Black Market, that being successful, building Scopa, that being successful, then building Dama, that being successful, raising my daughter, and just trying to get through the day to day, because my anxiety is through the roof. I'm having anxiety attacks. I don't have a choice but to go to work and make things happen, because otherwise she doesn't get shoes on her feet because I can't make money type of reality, right? There was no life insurance. I didn't have anything to kind of like fall back on. So I was just like in the middle of the ocean, and I was like, you either don't stop swimming or you drown, like, end of story. And so really that all just settled, like, probably over the last like 4 years, where I've like been able to take a deeper breath, been able to like make money. My daughter's like, in her own world, doing her own thing, where I've been like, oh my goodness, I'm finally come out of this cocoon of just doing, right? And not even realizing what the hell I've created over the last 10 years, right? So like, I'm not making a joke. When you read my resume, sometimes I'm like, I'm still in awe of it. But I was driving, you'll get a kick out of this again, because I'm still in the, I only make $7.50 mentality.
Right. Yep.
I was driving a car that I had won on Top Chef. And this car, my daughter learned to drive in it. The entire side was ripped off. There were like rips in the leather of the seat, where the cushion starts to come out. Do you know what I mean? And now mind you, I'm like making money. Right. Okay. Right. But in my mind, I still make $7.50 an hour. And I haven't even come to haven't even like taken account for everything I've done. And my brother, my younger brother, who's 20, I think he was like 24 at the time, had just gotten divorced and was kind of like not doing well in a way. And his wife had taken the car, and he's like, I can't get to work, Antonia. I know you were talking about selling your car. Would you sell me your car? And I was like, you know what? I'm going to give you my car, because this car was gifted to me, and I'm going to go buy myself a car. Right. And I gifted, I was like so excited that I could gift my brother this car. Of course that was falling apart, but he loves it and thinks it's like the best car in the world. And I went to the Range Rover dealership and I bought myself a Range Rover, and I walked in and I could like swipe my credit card for like the down payment on the thing. My credit score is amazing because I've never used it for anything. Do you know what I mean? Because I've just had my head, buried in the sand. And in that moment, I was just like, I can't believe that I can actually like buy myself this car. Right. Like, and I drove out of the dealership like sobbing, because for the last 10 years, I I was in the mode of like, what does my daughter need?
Yeah.
I was in full survival mode. When is the next shoe? When is the next like attack going to happen on my life? When is the next shoe going to, something bad's going to happen? When is it going to happen? I'm waiting for it. Okay, sure. They said the restaurant's doing good. Sure. I'm collecting paychecks and I'm just putting them in the bank, but I'm not living. Like I'm not having any kind of life. And in that moment, I still look at this car now and everyone's just like, it's really nice. And it's the crazy part was everyone's response to me buying this car for myself. They're like, you deserve, I can't believe it took you. You just like, I was like crying every time I went near someone because they were like, you deserve this so much. I'm so happy you did this for yourself. And I was like, I can't believe how many people were talking about how I wasn't doing anything for myself or enjoying anything that had happened. And so the truth is, I haven't really been able to enjoy anything that has happened because I've just been in full survival mode. And it's really just of recent where I was like, I'm going to buy myself this car, but really only because my brother was like, I need a car. And I was like,
so if this Antonia could go back to Antonia from 10, 15 years ago, like, would you have advice for her so she could enjoy it earlier? Like, how would you talk to her?
You know, I don't know if I would change anything, actually. You know, I think if this Antonia self could tell my younger Antonia self anything is just like, it'll be fine. Because that's what like this self tells my future self, right? Like when I have these still spirals of like, at any given moment, everything could be taken away from me. At any given moment, I will have no work. At any given moment, you know, I went through this whole period where I wasn't competing very well. And I was like, okay, now I can't cook. That's great. Awesome. Like now I'm just like not even a good chef anymore. I would just always remind myself that it actually always will be okay. You will always be okay. No matter what the outcome is, you know, sometimes we don't like the path. We don't like the answer in the moment. We don't realize the answer in the moment leads to something greater, far better for you tenfolds down the road. And that the path is backwards and down and up and left and right, not straight. That I would just kind of say that to her to kind of give her a little like pat, you know, but not change anything.
It's amazing. You know, and look, we do people who are driven like we are and who had anybody who's successful has been through so much and so much heartache and so much, I'm not going to call it failure because it's not, it's part of the journey. But the rejection and the fuck ups and the hurdles and that's what life is. You could be successful because you've been able to deal with more hurdles than most and overcome
100%.
more than everybody else. And, you know, I always say like, and I learned this from a therapist of mine, because I wake up every day and it says to me also, the roommates in my head, man, universe is going to come crashing down around you. And I got this therapist that said, no, the universe conspires to help us.
Yeah.
We got to somehow convince ourselves and let that sink in. And if we can, the world could be a lot less scary for us. And it's exactly, I think, what you're doing here. Like, hey, it's going to be okay, but it's so hard for us to comprehend while we're in that battle. And even after you're successful, like, look, there's still, a lot of us who are at the top, like we have this monster in us that, makes us think that tomorrow we're all going to be canceled and over and done and it's all going to be gone. And I've been going through it and I've been on Fox for 20 years and, me and Terry Bradshaw were always, we're out after this year. We're done here. It's just like, that's what the roommates in our head tell us when we're the best of what we do.
Oh yeah.
Right.
I just went through the period where, I wasn't competing just very well. And I was like, okay, it's just a matter of time now. Like I've just gotten too old and I can't do it anymore. And I've lost I've lost all of these young people to come in. They just know so much more than you do. And I was like, and then I remember, Guy was like, you're doing Tournament of Champions one more time this year. And I was like nauseous and like sick to my stomach about it, and, I came out of the gate last year, like a monster, and just, handled it in such a big way. And so, I don't know.
It doesn't matter. I hope you see, here's the thing for me. I look at you like you're a gangster, right? And you've already done it. It doesn't matter if you win or lose now. You've done it already. You already did it. And I try and tell this to people who are, used to be world champions in fighting. And I tell it to people who played in the NFL, like, dude, you did it. Just because the uniform's off doesn't mean you're still not a gangster. You'll always be a gangster. And you've got to realize that also, like, you're there. You've done it. It's not a week by week thing. And that's what we too many of us do that. Like, oh man, this week I do it. Like, damn, crap, this week I didn't have a lot of scoops. Fuck, man, I suck. And yeah, we've done it. We've done it at the highest level, but we got to play mind games with ourselves to make sure that we have to give ourselves that grace.
Well, the crazy part is, let me ask you a question, because I feel like this is the weird part, right? Like, I am the most self-deprecating person alone. Like, Greg will tell you, he'll be like, oh my God, she's spiraling. Just give her some space. Like, she'll come back. Don't worry. Then you put me in a room where I have to sell myself. And I'm like, my biggest cheerleader.
Yes.
I'm like, you want to know what I could do? You want to know what I could do? It's like, how do these two people live together?
Right. Why could you do it? So how do you get yourself, Antonia, to then start make sure you're those people in the room and you sell yourself to yourself?
Yeah. Sell myself to myself. Sell myself to myself.
Right. That's what we have to do. 1,000,000%. And it's just
like
so hard.
So many times, like, producers will be like, oh my God, have you ever seen Antonia in the room with like the president of Food Network? She murders it. She kills it. And I'm like, yeah, put her in the room. I was like, yeah, put me in the room, coach. Like, let me in, right. And then I get in the room and they're like, we love you. We'll give you anything. And then all of a sudden I'm like, then I go home and I'm like, nobody likes me.
Hey, give me a couple more questions before I let you go. Give me, now that you've been on TV and you're this big name, and it's so funny because Antonia and I I was throwing a Super Bowl party a couple of years ago, and I roll up with, it was me, her, Wiz Khalifa, and Guy Fieri, and our guys at Fox. One of our producers, Bill Richards, you got Antonia Lofaso here? Oh my God! I just want to meet her. I just want to meet her. Right. So now that you are where you've been on TV,
that's because Bill loves Scopa. That's because
Bill loves Scopa. Nobody loves you. Yeah. And but give me your moment of, like, that someone has come up to you and you're like, holy fuck, how did I get, like, someone just recognized me from TV that like, I can't believe this shit happened. Like, I'm going to tell you real quick, like mine was, I'm two things, but I'm at the Emmys and I just went with some Fox people and I'm in the bathroom and the big stars come in. They're like, oh my God, Jay Glazer. Dude, I started Jason Witten, my fantasy team this morning because of what you said, where he's going to play. Or and they, hey, there's Jay Glazer. And I'm like, what? And they were like, oh, dude, I go out of your stuff for my fantasy football team. And I'm like, is this really fucking happening right now? And they were all big stars. And I'm like, God, how did I get here? Give me your moment like that.
So it was actually a Guy's star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. Because it was Matthew McConaughey.
Yes.
Like, Matthew McConaughey was there and he was just
presented him. Yes.
He presented him and he knew, like, when he walked by, he's like, hey, Antonia's here. I was like, wait, what? Like, it was insane to me that these celebrities, like Selena Gomez, when I did Selena's show, she was just like, someone came up to me at like the Food and Wine event. And they were just like, Selena Gomez only follows like 20 people. Like, she's got like some very small, she has like 20, however many million people follow her, but she's like, literally has like this many people. And I'm like one of the people she follows. And so it's like, when you have these moments where you're like, oh my God, these huge celebrities that literally that people look up to and and then they're like, but you made this, blah, blah, blah. I was like, I just can't even believe that that's part of your vocabulary. That's like on the bigger level, right? On the much more like important level of like where I feel like I've touched people and I want to cry about it, is I will randomly get DMs. And a lot happened when I gave the commencement speech at the Culinary School a couple of years ago here in Los Angeles. And to this day, I still get random kids that I gave the speech to that are in Los Angeles that are still working, that will see me in restaurants, and they'll come up to me and they go, you gave this speech and talked about, and they will pick a piece that I talked about. Mostly what I always say is don't skip the middle. Everyone wants, to just, they started and then they just want to be successful. I'm like, don't skip the middle. The middle is the most important part. And I've had students come up and quote that back to me. And I want to cry because I'm like, oh my God, they heard me. These young little sponges who are so excited about this culinary industry that, has jaded so many of us. And me, I've wanted to quit, love it, hate it, all the things, right? Remembered that one piece that I said to them, they hung on to it, right? And it's like, I changed this, or I changed my path and now I'm doing this. And I love what I do because you said this. And I'm like, oh my God, I've changed the course of certain people's lives because of something I've said.
Amazing.
And to me, that's like,
You know, so far, because my last question before the final last question was going to be like, hey, give me the best business advice you can give the people out there. And then I think you just answered it.
Don't skip the middle.
That's amazing.
The middle
That's
is
amazing.
the middle is like the hardest.
Yeah.
It is the shit. You know what I mean? It's the, you know, I stepped in shit for 10 years kind of feeling, but it is like the most important part.
I love that. All right. Here's my last question for you. I ask all my guests this. Give me the moment that anytime in your life, career, anything, that could have broken you, should have, and didn't. And as a result, you came out of the other side of that tunnel much stronger with this mental wealth we're talking
about. You know, is probably the day that Zaya's dad died, like without question. That was when I think about my life, I think about it in before and after, right? So when he was here and now when he's gone, my life split into two pieces. And it was a situation that without question should have broken me, right? Like financially, I was in no way, shape, or form ready to just take care of her financially by myself. You know, emotionally, did I want to do it by myself? No. You know, my daughter was 11 years old at the time. I had just opened Black Market. I'm trying to figure out my own career. And I talk about this all the time. It's like success out of necessity, right? Like I didn't have a moment. I had a choice in that moment. Like I was either going to be like victimized by this horrific thing that happened, or I was going to take it and use that fuel to like put me in a situation that was far better than where I had started. And it was something that like every single day of like, you know, my young daughter not wanting to go to school, not understanding why I was at work, you know, still trying to like open restaurants and build teams. And every piece of that shouldn't have worked in theory. Every single piece of it, right? Like should not have worked in theory. And, you know, none of it was easy. You know, I literally spent probably like 10 years in purgatory or what felt like purgatory. And, but now the incredible thing is like my daughter did an interview with me for something, probably like a year ago. And all she talks about is my strength. All she talks about is my perseverance. All she talks about is remembering how I was almost catatonic when he first died and couldn't even figure out how to get us to New York. And then all she remembers is me like making every dream of hers come true.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
That's incredible. That's one of the coolest answers I've ever had on that question.
Yeah.
That is amazing.